When I was 8, my 2 older sisters and one of their friends had a pamphlet from a church that mentioned the Ouija board. They stupidly made up one with cardboard and red nail polish. Well, they attempted. I ratted them out to my parents while they were still painting the letters because it seemed off to me. Both my parents didn't know what a Ouija board was, but when they saw it, a huge ass-whooping commenced. The friend got dismissed and told not to come back. They both got a belt beating they still haven't forgotten. My dad burnt the cardboard that night when I was with him since fire is fun. The odd thing is that from a piece of cardboard that was 12 inches by 12 inches, it burned at least 5 feet in the air in the barbecue pit. There was a cornfield behind my house growing up, and a weird growling noise came from that field, and I asked my dad what that noise was. He said it was probably a dog, and literally kicked me to go back in the house. This was during the summer. Then October came, and I remember that night clear as day. We all went trick-or-treating, and when we drove up into the driveway, my mom asked my dad why he hadn't turned all the lights off. He said he did so that people would know not to come asking for candy. Every light in the house was turned on. As soon as we all stepped foot into the house, the entire place smelled of rotting meat. We didn't even get a chance to take our shoes off before my dad said, "Hey, let's go get more candy." Everyone got back into the car except him. He swept the house and left all the lights on, but when we got back, the smell was gone. We asked later in life what that was all about, and all he had to say to us was that as kids, we wouldn't understand, or we would be too scared to know what lurks at night. My stepdad is the kind of man that doesn't lie, ever, which is why I believe his story about a Ouija board experience he had when he was younger. He said he had friends over and they had a Ouija board they wanted to play. After a bit of playing around, they made contact with a being that said it was a demon. His friends were asking it questions, but he said the thing pinpointed him. It told my stepdad it would visit him again later after midnight. Thoroughly freaked, they put the board away. My stepdad fell asleep and with dead seriousness said he was awoken right after midnight by it. Now, the demon had told them its name, but my stepdad refused to tell me, as he was genuinely afraid. Anyway, he said this thing woke him. It was sitting at the end of his bed, grinning. He said it was small and evil looking, just grinning at him. The thing told him his first child would die, and it left. My stepdad said afterwards that he tried to get rid of the board. He first threw it out with the trash, but it didn't work. He said a few days later, a boy that he had never seen in the neighborhood showed up at his door with the board. He handed it to my stepdad and said, "This is yours," and left. So now super freaked, my stepdad tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. The fire kept dying no matter what he did. So then he dug a very deep hole, put the board in it, placed a Bible on top, and buried it. He's not seen the board since. As far as what the demon predicted, it came true. His first wife miscarried after 3 months. Here's a Ouija story that still freaks me out to this day, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible. While stationed in Germany in the early 2000s, me and a group of friends decided to play the Ouija board in our military dorm rooms. Only 4 of us actually played, while a couple more people drank and watched us. After a couple minutes of us joking around, we started to ask more serious questions. We eventually got in contact with a teen girl, Cheryl, who told us she was looking for her boyfriend. She said that they were driving back from a Grateful Dead concert when they crashed their car and died, and she hasn't seen him since. The road they crashed on was one we knew well. It connected 2 Air Force bases and was pretty curvy and dangerous, and a lot of people had crashed and died driving it. After a couple minutes of small talk, she told us that she had to leave, but asked us if we could please find her boyfriend for her and gave us his name. We eventually were able to make contact with him, and when we asked him if he knew Cheryl, he said yes. She was his true love, and he regretted not being able to be with her and missed her very much. He told us to tell her that he'd always love her and that he was sorry. When we asked him what he was sorry about, He just spelled out random letters until he eventually stopped communicating with us. After around 10 minutes of unsuccessfully trying to get in touch with Cheryl and her boyfriend again, we finally got in contact with an older woman. She seemed really sweet and nice, and she said she knew Cheryl. When we asked her why she was unable to find her boyfriend, she said it was because Cheryl was in heaven and her boyfriend was in hell. It was at that moment where the candles in the room flickered out and we all jumped up and turned the lights on. Needless to say, everyone got pretty freaked out and decided to stop playing, and we never really talked about it after that. It's been over 10 years and it still freaks me out thinking about that night. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not convinced about Ouija boards, and I think that anything that requires human interaction has so much room for human error that I don't think it's possible to really rely on it. Keeping that in mind, I had an experience with one, and I've realized that it might not even matter if it was some sort of communication, or just my friends and my subconscious. This happened just over a year ago. I was in a pretty dark place emotionally and had been for a couple of months. I was thinking a lot about not really wanting to be alive anymore. I was hanging out with some friends. They had used the Ouija board a number of times and had thought it was pretty interesting. Honestly, I didn't really believe their stories, since I had used it a couple of times when I was younger and got no results. Still, they wanted to play while we were hanging out, so I joined in. We asked if there was anyone there, got a yes, and then asked if they wanted to speak to anyone in particular. It spelled my name immediately. What surprised me was how quickly and forcefully the planchette moved. When we asked what it wanted to tell me, it said, "Don't die." I won't give a play-by-play of the rest of the conversation, but it basically told me I was a good person and that things would get better. It really freaked my friends out and led to some awkward questions about my emotional state, but it was really what I needed to hear right then. It was a really positive experience, and regardless of what caused it, I'm really happy I experienced it.